wisely with those outside of the faith, but we are to share winsomely. Look at verse 6. Let your speech always be gracious, seasoned with salt, so that you may know how you ought to answer each person. See, it was always Paul's intention that the gospel had to be shared. It had to be declared. He wanted it to be made known, but he also knew that we had to connect with people in the appropriate ways to make it happen. That's why he says, let your speech always be gracious. If you could read the Greek behind the English translation here, you can see that the Greek word charis is the word that is translated as graciousness. It's that same root that means graciousness here is a root word for a word being charismatic, right? Being winsome, if you will. In fact, this word can also be translated as charming or winsome. So you see, what we share is absolutely important, but also how we share is important. We always need to be gracious in our deportment, in our engagement with our words. And as Paul puts it, we need to make sure that what we say is seasoned with salt. Salt, we use salt pretty much for one thing for the most part, right? We use it to flavor our food, and that certainly was a purpose. In the original context of Paul's day, salt had at least two purposes. One was as a preservative. So you put it to sort of elongate the life of meat. It would preserve meat for a time. But also it added flavoring. So when Paul threw out this word, seasoned with salt, he probably had the second terminology, the second definition in mind, more so than the first. The speech that is seasoned with salt is something that's flavorful, something that's easier to swallow, something that's acceptable and less offensive. When Paul says, let your speech be gracious, always seasoned with salt, he's not saying that we strip away the hard truths of the gospel, but that we share the gospel in a compelling way, in a winsome way. You may have some friends that are at different places spiritually. You may have some that may actually be open to the gospel, and praise God if that's the case. Take advantage of that and share the gospel in a winsome way. But you also may have some friends that at this moment in time are just shut down to the gospel, closed down. They're not mad about it. They're like my friend and just put up their hands, that's not where I'm at right now. And that's fine, you're going to run across people like that. But you may also encounter people who not only reject the gospel, they're just antagonistic against it. And we're seeing a rise of this. We're seeing more and more people who are not content with just saying no to the gospel, but they want to come against those of the faith. Now, those are real barriers that exist. And so what you and I must do is help those people, especially those who say no or say no with antagonism, to overcome those barriers that stand in the way of Christ for them. And sad to say it, some of the greatest barriers to the gospel are people like you and I sitting in this room. If you were to ask them, for many people, your friends may think that the reason why they don't want to have anything to do with Christians is that Christians are arrogant, they're hypocritical, they're ignorant. And you know why that is? Why they say that? It's because they've been around Christians who have been arrogant, hypocritical, and ignorant, right? They're not making this stuff up. I'm not saying that that's all of us, but it doesn't take a whole lot of us to represent the rest of us. They've been around Christians who have not been gracious in their speech. Their words have not been seasoned with salt. So what does that mean for us? Well, we can't change our fellow Christians, though I will say this. If you know someone who is not being gracious in their speech, if you know someone who is not allowing the words to be seasoned with salt, as a brother or sister in Christ, correct them. Deal with them. You need to. Their testimony is harming the testimony of all. Our job, in relation to those who do not know Christ, is to be winsome to our lost friends, to our friends who are on the outside, to show them that there are some Christians who are actually believing this stuff and living this stuff out